During their spring meeting this past June, 75% of the U.S. bishops approved the drafting of a document addressed to all Catholic faithful on Eucharistic coherence. Next week, a draft of that document will be presented to the entire Bishops' Conference at their annual meeting in Baltimore. What exactly will be considered in this draft? And how might it be received? Joining me to discuss is the Most Reverend Michael Olson, Bishop of Fort Worth, Texas. Your Excellency, thank you for being here. You are a member of the USCCB Committee on Doctrine, the committee tasked with putting together this draft document entitled The Mystery of the Eucharist in the Life of the Church. What's the focus of the draft?
The draft of the document came about as part of our priorities and planning, and it was born of our experience at Encuentro and also our experience of the National Convocation. Besides that, simultaneously, the Pew study indicated that many Catholics, even practicing Catholics, did not understand what the Church teaches on the Eucharist, the nature of the Eucharist, and of course the corresponding responsibilities that we have in responding to the gift that Christ offers us in the Eucharist. The focus really is very core. It's an introductory document that'll hopefully lead us to the Eucharistic revival.
Now, following the USCCB meeting, and even during that meeting in June, there was a lot of debate about the worthiness of receiving the Eucharist, the main focus being that those who receive the Blessed Sacrament should be in communion with the Church, including with Church teaching. Now, this would naturally affect public officials who take positions opposed to that teaching. There are already reports that the draft document on Eucharistic coherence is not going to focus on the Eucharist, is going to focus rather on the Eucharist as a gift and not conscript the distribution of communion. Is that the case?
Well, I'm not going to comment on the draft of the document until it's discussed, debated, and amended, and then presented to the conference. And I think the integrity of the process requires that. I can speak to several first principles, though, and that is, first of all, that you can't help but discuss the Eucharist as a gift without also discussing our response in living the Christian life, because as the Second Vatican Council teaches, the Eucharist is the source and summit of the Christian life. And so I think there is, what we saw in June was a debate and discussion among the bishops, not about the gravity of such mortal sins like abortion, for example, most especially and preeminently, but also what is our response, first of all, as Catholics, who receive the Eucharist and are invited to receive the Eucharist by virtue of our baptism and confirmation, but then also our responsibility as pastors, as bishops, in assisting them in being formed well in the coherence of the Christian life.
Yeah, church teaching and canon law, Your Excellency, already makes clear what's expected when it comes to reception of the Eucharist. But we still have wild variances from diocese to diocese. For all the talk of unity, there seems to be very little when it comes to reception of the Eucharist. Why do you think that is?
Well, I think it's a very wide I think it's a wide church here in the United States. And I think the discussions that we've been having are helping us to come to a sense of unity in a response for our pastoral responsibility as the bishops. I think also one of the challenges is for us pastorally is that our people tend to identify religiously first by political parties, and then secondly, by their communion in the church. That's the heart of the pastoral problem, I think, that we're facing, is that with the intentionality, so much emphasis on intentionality of churches and parishes and such, that we tend to only worship with people who agree with us. when precisely the whole point of being Catholic is that we receive the gift of the Eucharist that transforms us and makes us the church. In a sense, it calls every one of us to conversion. It enables us to respond to God's grace as God desires us to do, that we might decrease and he might increase. And I think that's a challenge for life here in the United States, where we've had so much emphasis on individualism, which is gives much to what's good about the United States, but it's also, if you will, a challenge to living our Catholic life.
Yeah. In an interview this week, Senator Dick Durbin of Illinois, a pro-abortion Democrat, complained that his diocese of Springfield is being, quote, fundamentally unfair by denying him communion for his stance on abortion. He said, if we're going to start down the road of denying communion, where do we stop? My views on abortion are publicized regularly with my voting record. Other Catholics may share my point of view. Statistics suggest they do, but they show up to communion every week without any questions asked. In the end, it is a personal decision to stand at the rail, and I think, with very few exceptions, communion is offered to anyone or anybody if that person believes that they are worthy of it. What do you make of that reasoning there, Your Excellency? And isn't the bishop responsible for protecting the sacraments?
Well, even prior to the bishop, I'd say the communicant is responsible. And I don't hear much of the tenor of grace in the senator's statement. I hear a lot about right and demand, and perhaps even a consumer approach to this. And then I think the bishop has a responsibility, both privately and publicly, especially when someone not only advocates, but enables and promotes the commission of grave sin, and then also sends the message that is scandal to encourage Catholics to live that way and to embrace that. That's the added response. That's the added problem, I think, with much of the public advocacy of public Catholics in life, in political life, in civil service, where they adopt the position of preachers of their own integral, authentic life, but that fall short of what the church, what Christ asks of us, frankly, in the life of the church, what the gospel demands of us integrally.
Well, yeah. No, Bishop, I've said in recent weeks, I've been saying it for years, some of these public figures who are Catholic, they end up challenging, they're really attempting to challenge the teaching authority, not only of the bishops, but of the Pope himself, of what it means to be Catholic and what are the conditions of Catholicism, what full membership entitles us to and what it entails. After President Biden met with Pope Francis a couple of weeks ago, he told the press the Pope told him he was a good Catholic and could continue to receive communion. Your reaction to those statements, true or otherwise, and is this a scandal for a Catholic president to say something like this?
Well, the Holy See responded that that was a private conversation. It also didn't affirm or deny if the Pope said what President Biden said he said. I think it's, first of all, wrong for the president to violate a pastoral conversation that way and to turn it into something political, all right, which is what he's doing, is he's saying, the Pope, who very much is committed to not judging, frankly, publicly, has judged him to be a worthy Catholic and he should keep on doing it. It doesn't ring true, all right? It doesn't ring true as far as factual. Now, I'm not saying the president is lying, but it's certainly not something that corresponds with the practice of the Holy Father. And its attempt to say that the Pope endorses his position, meaning the president's, and that is far from the truth.
Yeah, well, that's also at odds with the Pope's public statements about abortion, marriage, a whole host of issues that Biden is on the other side from the Church and the Pope on. But those comments, Your Excellency, what impact do they have on the bishops of the U.S. when it comes to protecting the sacrament of the Eucharist or choosing to deny someone from communion due to their stance on an issue contrary to Catholic teaching? Does it undermine your teaching authority?
Well, I think it works against our teaching authority. The effect it should have on the bishops, and I really believe that for the most part it does is that it underscores our responsibility that we were ordained to teach the gospel, the fullness of the deposit of faith, and that's not just a reaction politically driven, but it's a constant accompaniment that a bishop must make with all his people through his priests, his deacons, the religious, the laity, and in particular those who are entrusted with the vocation of public service and witness. You know, and so without a doubt, it makes it difficult, but it also heightens what our responsibility is in the promise that we have from Christ of the grace that he gives us, and he'll be with us always.
Your Excellency, what do you hope this document on Eucharistic coherence will provide, not only to the bishops, but to the Catholic faithful, whom, as you mentioned a little while ago, they really don't understand the nature of the Eucharist any longer?
I hope that that beyond the coherence, which is one part of this document and only one, there will inspire people a recognition of the need for the Eucharist that we have, that it transcends us, that the Eucharist is not just something that we get together and do as a group of people who like each other and basically share the same values or culture or language, but rather that it is something that Christ gives us, his sacrifice, his very body, blood, soul, and divinity to transform us, that brings communion with him, with the Trinity, and with our neighbor, other members, that enables us to love as Christ loves, to repudiate sin by embracing his command, his mandatum, to love and to serve our neighbor. That's what I hope happens.
Yeah. Before I let you go, Bishop Olson, the last Thursday, Archbishop Jose Gomez of Los Angeles discussed the rise of new secular ideologies and movements for social change in the U.S. Now, this was during a virtual address to the Congress of Catholics and Public Life in Madrid. And he said the following, quote, "It's important for the Church to understand and engage these new movements, not on social or political terms, but as dangerous substitutes for true religion." He went on to say that his thesis is that the new social movements that exist in the U.S., such as social justice, wokeness, identity politics, intersectionality, and successor ideology, should be understood as pseudo-religions and even replacements and rivals to traditional Christian beliefs. And that can result in tribalism and reduce, everything to skin color and sexuality. Some are taking the Archbishop to task. Thomas Rees this week and others are claiming this is dividing Catholics from these social justice movements. Your thoughts?
I disagree with that assessment of the Archbishop's letter or article or speech. I forget what forum he delivered it in. It's precisely, there is a rejection of God and the transcendent, all right? And it also rejects relationship. All of these sort of secular, neo-secular philosophies really are focused on division, adversity, the revisioning of truth to be just simply self-aggrandizement, selfish interests, and used to break apart the community. And I think the Church has to respond to these things for the sake of the integrity of our gospel of social justice. Because if we don't keep things centered on Christ and the fullness of his gospel, we're going to diminish the authenticity and the liberating truth of that message, and we're going to end up lost and co-opted by secular interests.
Bishop Michael Olson, thank you for the insight, for your time, and we'll be watching you at the Bishops' Conference next week. Thank you so much.
Thank you. I'll be watching you too. Thank you.
Okay. It's a deal. Thank you,
All
Bishop.
Right.